One, you're live.
And welcome back. We are on Facebook Live right now, folks. You're out there in the interwebs. We want to say hi and thanks for tuning in. We are broadcasting from the 2017 DeLand Sport Aviation Showcase. We're going to be here today, tomorrow. We were here yesterday. The showcase stage inside the main exhibit hall is a new feature this year. We're offering our exhibitors, vendors, sponsors a chance to come up and talk to us about their wares, get people to come down and check out their booths. And a little earlier today we had a press conference, which is really cool news. So you want to keep an eye on our Facebook page. DeLand Sport Aviation Village is the Facebook page. Follow us on Facebook. They're on Twitter. They throw a dart at the internet and you're going to find them there somewhere. Now, when we talk about sport aviation, and of course my long-time history has all been around experimental aviation, people that build and fly their own airplanes, you get aircraft designs that are just eternal. They've been around forever, and they're great designs, and they just keep getting better over time. And it's my great honor to have Mr. Sebastien Heintz with Zenith Aircraft Company. Hello, Sebastian. How you doing today, brother?
I'm great, thank you.
So now, let's start out with the company itself, Zenith Aircraft Company. How long has Zenith been around? How long have you been producing kits or plans or what? How did it start to start with? How did Zenith come about?
Well, this is going to be our 25th anniversary this year. So we started in 1992, 25 years ago, manufacturing kit airplanes. And those of you that are familiar with Zenith and our industry know that there's history before Zenith, and that's my dad's company, Zen Air Limited up in Canada. And my dad started designing and manufacturing kit airplanes in the 1970s, 1974 specifically. And so started the Zenith Aircraft Company in the United States in Mexico, Missouri in 1992, 25 years ago.
And the aircraft, I mean, we're talking sheet metal aircraft. We're going back to the origins of the Experimental Aircraft Association and stuff. Build it yourself from the ground up, right? You can buy plans and a bunch of blank sheet metal and start the whole plane. Do I have to buy a kit? How does that work?
Well, again, explaining a little bit on the history, you know, my dad was an aeronautical engineer at the time, and he decided to build his own airplane. And this is the late 60s, early 70s, before a kit industry really existed. And so he had designed an airplane, and he was an engineer, so he wasn't a real good technical guy, so he designed something that was simple to build, that was simple tools, simple materials, and decided on sheet metal construction at the time because it was, you know, one of those materials that was readily available, simple tools, and relatively easy to build. And so started doing that with sheet metal construction. And again, because he wasn't a real craftsman, everything had to be simple curvature, simple forming, and so forth. So back in the 70s, before there really was an industry, he offered blueprints. So they were basically sketches of how the airplane comes together. And then from that, folks were asking for materials, for subs kits, for so forth. So little by little, kind of went into what we would consider today our kits, completed airplane kits. And that's where we supply all the parts that are pre-formed, pre-bent, and really supply something that is ready to put together with simple skills and simple tools.
Now, all of your bulkheads are aluminum bulkheads. All of your skin is the aluminum skin. It's all aluminum, right? Or you're saying sheet metal, but it's sheet aluminum. Now, when I buy the kit, I get my bulkheads, and I've got to rivet my skin to my bulkheads. Am I going to have to line everything up and drill every hole, or what?
And again, the kit industry over the years has really changed and evolved. Again, it used to be we supplied all the materials, but you had to do a lot of cutting, trimming, and then a lot of measuring and drilling. Nowadays, we use CNC technology a lot on the manufacturing side, where we can take advantage of that, and we do final hole size, match drill parts. So all the parts are completely pre-cut, all the holes are pre-drilled, and not just added hole, but the actual final hole size. So you basically now, the kit is really advanced, where you take the parts out of the box, they cleat-go together, and that's just the cleat-go is a temporary clamp, so they just clamp together and then rivet it together. And all the riveting that we use in our kits is the blind type riveting. It works like a hardware store pop rivet, if you will. Same principle. It's a full blind rivet, very simple tool, very simple skills, and so the riveting process itself was together very quickly. And all the alloys that we use, it's a 6061 T6 aluminum alloy, for lightweight, very corrosion resistant, modern alloy. And it's a nice thing is it's used a lot outside of aviation as well, so it's readily available and the cost is quite affordable also.
Now, for somebody like me who kind of grew up, I attended my first Oshkosh when I was 12. So, and I've been a number of years at Oshkosh. I moved to Florida, started coming to Sun and Fun. They used to build an airplane in a week, and that was one of your aircraft that they would do on these, build it in a week, and they'd start out with a pile of parts, and 7 days later, they were doing a test flight. Now, for the average home builder, let's say, how many hours, if I wanted to buy your kit, let's start with the kit itself. Let's describe the airplane. High wing, monoplane.
Well, we manufacture both the high wing line of airplanes as well as the low wing line of airplanes. So we have our most popular airplane right now is still our Stoll CH-750. High wing airplane, short takeoff and landing, which is what STOL stands for, Stoll. And again, all metal construction, like I was discussing a little bit earlier. And configuration as a short takeoff and landing airplane, it's not designed for high speed. It's a 100-mile-an-hour airplane, and but also very short takeoff distances. We typically put larger tires on them to be able to fly from unimproved off-airport areas. And again, we produce that in a kit form, or else you can also, like earlier, scrap build the airplane as well as component buy as you build type kits as well.
What engine does that take? What engine are you using on that?
And on the engine side, we tried not to prescribe a specific engine, let the builder himself choose the engine. And typically it's about a 100 horsepower engine, 90 horse on the low end, about 140 horsepower on the top end. Like Flemings and Continentals are the traditional aircraft engines, and we have more modern aircraft engines like the Jabiru, the Rotax, UL Power, as well as then also auto conversions like the Corvair, the Viking Honda-based engine, and so forth. So a lot of different engines can be put in and have been put in. And with these different engines as well, one of the things that we also supply is then the firewall forward support, the engine mount, the cow, the right propeller, and so forth.
So I'm gonna buy one of your kits. I don't want to have to deal with anything else. I want to write you a check, one check, and start building my airplane. How big of a check am I going to write, and how long is it going to be? How many hours am I going to have to put into building the plane from the ground up?
Well, the kit itself, you're going to be looking at, for the airframe portion, about $20,000. And that's going to get you everything except the engine, the instruments, and paint or upholstery. So the rule of thumb in the industry is about the kit is about a third of the total cost of the project. So you're going to spend another $20,000 typically on the engine side, and another $20,000 on the avionics, paint, and everything else. And that's a rule of thumb. Depending on the engine, you can do it for less. You can do it also, of course, you can always spend more money quite easily nowadays. But that's as a general rule of thumb. So you'd be looking at a finished airplane somewhere in the 60s is what we typically see. And that's for folks going with factory new engine, with the state-of-the-art avionics package. So there really are some good choices for that. Time-wise, our brochures say 300 to 500 hours. And that is a realistic time in terms of the time you spend working on the airplane. A lot of us that build airplanes, we're enthusiasts, so we're not in a big rush to get it done. We're enjoying the process. We're learning things. We're demonstrating things. We're trying out new things. So again, sometimes just getting it done is not getting it done quickly is not necessarily the goal. So, but again, for a lot of folks, I always tell customers plan to spend at least a year building the airplane, and that's working evenings, weekends, and so forth.
Okay, so I'm going to write you a check for $60,000, and you're going to deliver me a complete package to go. Now, I like what I'm doing, but I'm taking a year to do it, so I don't want to drop 60 grand today. What do you sell? Stage building kits? So you give me a fuselage kit. Where do your stage building kits go?
Well, first of all, the $60,000, like I mentioned earlier, is broken down into the engine portion, the avionics. Now, you really don't need your engine and avionics when you're starting to build the airplane. You know, when you're building an airplane, you're building a rudder, you're building an elevator, you're building a left wing, you're building a right wing. You're really not building an airplane, you're building section at a time, and only at the end do you put these sections together. And so, if you buy the full kit, again, you're looking at about $20,000, not $60,000, because you'll buy those things later. And then, of course, if you don't want to spend $20,000 up front, and for a lot of folks, it doesn't make sense because, like I mentioned, you're not building an entire airplane at the beginning. You're building sections of the airplane. So, for a few $100s, you can start on what we call the rudder starter kit, and that basically is a $300 kit, and you build the tail, the rudder vertical tail section of the airplane. And again, that's a good kit to start on. It's only a one-day project. You're also exposed to all the tools, the instructions, the manuals, and so it's a really good way. And I encourage folks that are considering building an airplane to spend $300 to learn more about it, because you know, at the end of the day, building an airplane is not for everyone. Some folks find it very rewarding and love doing it. Other folks say, well, maybe they're better off buying a finished airplane. And for me, I don't want to try to sell an airplane to somebody that doesn't want to build an airplane. I want to sell an airplane to somebody that knows what they're going to be doing and enjoying the building process. And so again, they can start building for just a few $100s, then you can move on to the rest of the tail kit, spend a couple $1,000s on that, spend $5,000 or $6,000 in the wing kit, another $5,000 or $6,000 in the fuselage kit, and then a little bit more on the landing gear, finishing kit, and so forth.
So I can actually, so I don't have to write you a check for the whole thing. I can buy the airplane and build it in pieces, and then when I get down to the end, of course, everything goes together. Now, so I've bought my tail kit, and I've worked on my tail kit. Okay, that's kind of nice. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna start with the elevator kit, the horizontal tail kit, and I'm getting that's a little more complicated, and I'm starting to feel that I'm not really 100% comfortable in doing this. Do you offer build assist? Do you have a place where people can go to work, come to you to work on their airplane? How's that work?
That's a good question. Generally, though, you know, as you're building the airplane, again, you're starting, like you're mentioning, starting on the tail sections and moving into more involved or advanced sections. But you'll find that, you know, you're learning a lot as you're going as well. So usually, as you know, by starting on the simple stuff and moving into the more advanced areas, you are going to be prepared for it, because and our instructions will guide you through that process. So it's a natural progression of learning, and I always encourage folks to be open to learning, because if you're going to be building an airplane, you will be learning a lot. If you're close to learning, you're going to be forced to learn a lot, or if you're open to learning, you're going to enjoy the learning process. So I always encourage folks to have an open mind and to want to learn. And typically, I think the type of person that wants to build their own airplane is the type of person that wants to learn. Right? Because I think that's one of the advantages of that. And that's where, again, if you're open to learning and you build an entire airplane, building your airplane is really going to be a wonderful project, because you will have learned so much. You will have developed a lot of new skills by doing that. And that's where, when I talk to a lot of my customers, having built their airplane is really one of the highlights of what they consider their accomplishments that they've done in their lifetime. Because again, not many people can say that they've built their own airplane and now that they're flying, that's something that they've built themselves. So it's really a wonderful accomplishment from that standpoint. Back to your original question on the builder assist and getting outside professional help, absolutely, that is available. On the airframe side, we find that's not a real need for most people. At the same time, when you're finishing the airplane, installing the engine and installing the avionics, you'll have spent 300-400 hours building the airplane, but none of that experience is really applicable to installing an engine or installing avionics. And that's mechanical, electronic, and that's where your local A&P mechanic at the local airport. Again, that's generally what they're trained the most in, because A&P, they maintain airplanes, they replace engines, they upgrade avionics, so they're usually quite well versed in the avionics side of things and on the engine side of things. So that's where using those services of a local person. And then back again, you mentioned builder assistance, professional builder assistance. There are shops around the country. Usually it's oftentimes a retired mechanic or someone that's already built 2 or 3 airplanes himself, and is wanting, and either really enjoys it or is wanting to share that. And so they'll often have the facilities to do that, and that definitely some folks take advantage of those professional builder assist facilities.
And that's, you don't, it's not a dedicated Zenith builder assist facility. It's a facility that is willing to help anybody, but I'm building Zenith, and I want to learn from Sebastien himself. You have workshops. You do workshops. I recall seeing you guys do workshops.
Absolutely, we do workshops at the factory, and we actually do a lot of them. We do a workshop every single month throughout the year, and we've been doing this for years and years. And the workshop is geared more toward getting people started and learning more about building their own airplane than it is what I would consider than after-the-fact service and support. But it really becomes one and the same in many ways as well. But the factory workshops, folks come out to the factory in Mexico, Missouri. We have a nice new modern production facility for our kits there. And we spend 2 days building that rudder tail section. So basically we're building an entire section of the airplane from start to finish, and going through all the steps and procedures of doing that. We have the detailed step-by-step assembly guides, we have the tools, we have the workshop area itself. So people that are interested in learning more about building their own airplane, they can really be exposed to that, and again, go through all the steps and procedures that they would be doing on their own at home, except they're at the factory. Of course, because we're at the factory, we take advantage of the opportunity, do factory tours, look at the rest of the airplane, how it's built. We've got factory demonstrator airplanes there as well, so take folks out. Everybody goes up for a flight in the airplane, and we get to meet the people that design the airplanes, the people that port the airplanes, the office ladies, and everything else. So it really becomes a good experience for folks. And when you're starting a kit project, it's going to be a multi-year project, and you're going to be starting a relationship with the company. And so I always encourage folks, get to know us, get to know the people that are going to be supporting you. Because if you don't like them, or if they don't treat you well at the beginning, they're probably not going to treat you well later on as a customer. So build that relationship and get to know that. And if you do that as a customer, you'll end up being a lot happier and a lot more realistic in your expectations.
Now you said that's Mexico, Missouri. Is that North Missouri, South Missouri? Is that would I fly into Branson? Would I fly into St. Louis? Where would I fly to go to Mexico, Missouri?
Mexico, Missouri is central part of the state, a little bit on the northeastern side, but if you know where Columbia, Missouri is, that's right smack in the middle of the state. We're about 30 minutes northeast of Columbia, Missouri. Flying in commercial, usually St. Louis is the easiest choice. There are also flights into Columbia, Missouri on American, and so we're relatively accessible. Of course, if you're a pilot yourself, we're right on the airport at Mexico Memorial Airport, 2 big runways, and it's a good little airport to fly into.
All right, now you also do workshops in other locations around the country. Right? Do you do workshops at Osh or Sun and Fun? Or I know, like I was saying earlier, they were for several years they were building a Zenith. They would start with a pile of parts, and at the end of the week they'd have an airplane. And the last day of the show, they'd always test fly the airplane. So that was a big thing. But don't you see your workshops being offered at air shows at different aviation events?
Yes, we find that not everybody can come out to the factory, so we try to make our workshops, try to bring the workshops to the folks as well. Last year we were at the Sebring show at the expo, and we're looking at expanding it as well, maybe to Sun and Fun, Oshkosh also. Like you mentioned, back in 1976, I think it was the first time we built an airplane in 7 days, and that was my dad's project, and did that at Oshkosh in 1976. And and when I look back on it, that was a real accomplishment, because when I look at how much easier our kits are today to build, and in 2014 we did the 1 Week Wonder project together with EAA, where we built an entire CH-750 cruiser airplane in 7 days. And again, that was a major undertaking and a very successful program. And EA is still operating and flying that airplane today, so it worked out really well. But when I look at what my dad did back in '76, again, when the kit was a much lower level of completion, and they managed to get that built, and like you said, they flew it on the last day. So I still think that's a pretty cool accomplishment. And but we do look at expanding our workshops. Maybe next year here at the DeLand show, we're looking at maybe doing the rudder assembly workshop as well.
Well, great. Now we've been talking about the building process and the help we can get and the costs and stuff. And I had asked you before you walked up on stage, how many different models are you offering now? And there was kind of a blank look because it's I'm kind of assuming there was two basic blueprints. There's a low wing and a high wing, and 1,000 variations from there. What you said you're running various powers and you gave horsepower ranges. What's your preferred? Do you have a preferred? This is the one we're going to let you build. We're going to let you power it with whatever you want to power it with. But we like what? What's your preferred power plant for your aircraft?
I really don't have a specific brand preference. What I prefer is my customers to have good experiences with their airplane. And kind of like a car, an airplane engine is, if your engine doesn't work, your vehicle doesn't work. So if you have an airplane with an engine that requires a lot of maintenance or you can't get parts for or something like that, it's going to reflect on the entire airplane and then your entire flying experience. So it's definitely in my best interest that customers put good engines on their airplane, something that they can maintain and operate. That said, I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all in terms of the type of customer as well as the type of airplane that you put it in. For example, auto conversions have worked well. Like for example, the Corvair conversions, the guys that build up their own auto conversions, that works well for the guys that like to build engines, if you will. And a lot of aircraft builders happen to also like to build airplanes or engines as well, because that's they're techie people and they like to do that. So it's really not my place to say, well, a car engine is not as well suited for those individuals. It becomes a really good project. For me personally, I'm not an engine mechanic, and I don't want to be an engine mechanic. I'm the type that I'll change the oil in my airplane and to fly that way. So for me, going with the standard aircraft engine, whether it's a Rotax, a Jabiru, UL Power, or the older school engines like the Continental Lycomings, that just makes more sense for me personally. And I think for most builders, that's a bit the same thing. But and again, even among those different engines, there are some that are better suited at certain things, certain applications. You've got the debate of air-cooled versus liquid-cooled, and so forth. And then again, there's not a right or wrong answer to these questions. It depends a lot on where you're operating the airplane, the type of flight, and I'm doing with it. With our STOL airplanes, we end up shipping those in remote areas. A lot of the time, they're being operated off airport. So having access to good fuel is an important consideration. 100 low lead fuel is available at airports. It's not that readily available off airports. And so the type of fuel becomes an issue. Again, the environment you're flying into, if you're really hot all the time, you want an engine that has better cooling, and that versus if you're really cold all the time, you want something that will start well in the cold. And so, maybe with the possibility of hand starting it, because if you have a dead battery, then that could be an issue. So, again, a lot of these factors you have to really look into. And, one of the wonderful things about building your own airplane is that your airplane is your creation, so that you really don't have to follow what Zenith tells you. You can start with, using what we supply, but then really personalize the airplane. It's whether it's with the choice of engine, the avionics, and so forth, and really customize an airplane for your type of flying so that you'll really have something that will work best for you.
Well, that kind of leads to another question. I'm going to take your basic airplane and I'm going to modify it. So your best engine for your airplane is fully dependent on your mission, what you're going to be doing with it. And the best of the, again, it goes back to what your needs are. What is the most, in custom cars and hot rods, they call them one-off. What is the most one-off of your design that somebody has done? What's the highest mod to one of your that comes to mind?
Well, yeah, that's a trick question, nearly. But something, for example, putting the airplane on floats. That's definitely a very unique mod. And if you have an airplane that's all of a sudden very different than what it was before, it'll fly very differently. It'll be able to land on water, which is completely different, of course. So that's definitely one of those areas where you can really add new capability on the airplane. I like that. Again, instrument panels, that's one area that we really see a lot of different instrument panels on these airplanes, and I always encourage our customers to be creative on your panel, because that's going to be something you're going to be looking at all the time when you're flying that airplane. So create a panel that you'll want to look at, and has the equipment, the features, and all that you want, whether it's putting a tablet or an iPad on the panel, to old steam gauges, or a combination somewhere in between, that works out fine. Our CH-750 Super Duty airplane that we introduced at Oshkosh this past summer, which is basically a little heavier duty version of our standard Stoll CH-750, we introduced what we call the unpanel on the airplane. We actually took the instrument out of the airplane and we replaced it with articulating arm with a 17-inch glass panel display in it. Same panel that you find in the Tesla car, which is a large 17-inch display, and running all the avionics on that glass panel. And and we did it because it's unique, and it makes sense, because a lot of the glass panel technology, again, we could put everything on one single display. Is it for everybody? Of course not. It's a preference, and some builders are really like that kind of choice. Others aren't quite ready for it, and we'll have to kind of grow into it and see where it takes us. But I see there's definitely a place for that. Of course, once you have a smaller movable panel, the advantages include the visibility, the added visibility, because you don't have this arbitrary panel that's across the whole front of the fuselage. And then again, with the glass panel like that, you can really reconfigure when you've got that much space on it. You can reconfigure the instruments where things are displayed and so forth. So you can actually have some of the more critical information right at your eyesight. So when you're looking out and then just looking down at your panel, it's nearly like a heads-up display. And so that kind of innovation I encourage, and I always like to see that kind of stuff. And our customers are really our best research and development team, because with the experimental aircraft category, you can actually modify and equip in the way you want to. And presumably you'll do some research and doing things the way for a specific reason, so that again, you can configure the airplane for your needs. One thing we've been working with more in the last couple of years is working with pilots with disabilities, because again, with a amateur built airplane, you can actually configure the airplane a lot easier. You don't have to get an FAA blessing to doing all these mods. And so for handicapped pilots, whether it's without the use of their legs, or whether it's the use of one arm, or sometimes a combination of all of these things, again, we can really work with these customers to customize these airplanes. And as been working in this industry for quite a few years now, I've discovered we all have some level of disability, and sometimes it's hard to admit, but even prescription glasses, have corrections for that. So it's that's just something that we work with, and as we get older, we have more disabilities, whether it's our knees or hips or things like that, helping us getting in and out of the airplane. So by accommodating these things, I think the amateur category, the ability to customize your airplanes for your specific needs, becomes a wonderful thing.
That's great. Sebastien, I sure appreciate you coming by. Now, let me ask you this. We're talking about innovations and everything else. What are you working on? What's coming down the pipe? Got any new designs, any new configurations coming out? Anything you're ready to share with us, or just tease us a little bit? You're working on a 4-place ultralight like Rutan, or what? I remember as a kid being at one of Bert's speeches at Oshkosh, and well, what are you doing next? Well, I'm working on a 4-place ultralight. That's a great rollicking laughter, but joking aside, what you got any new projects you're working on? Any new configurations that you might want to hint at?
We're always working on new things. Some of these things, R&D projects. Sometimes some of these projects never make it to market. Sometimes there's good reason. Again, you try it out. You see where it goes. Overall, we're still quite interested with electric power. We're quite fascinated by that, and I think we're going to be seeing more and more of that. the original prototypes that we've seen out in the marketplace, with limited utility and so forth, limited battery life, but we're really seeing these developments are trickling down. These developments outside of aviation, specifically in the automotive world, cell phone batteries and so forth. That is really technology that is trickling down to us. And so we're working on actually right now 3 different electric projects, and but there's still projects, or they're not done yet. The more we're working with it, the more impressed. I've been driving electric cars and solar panels at my factory and so forth. I really see a good future in that, and so I think it's exciting. I'm optimistic that electric power can do to light aviation, especially on the experimental side where we're installing things ourselves. But I can see where electric motors can do the same changes that we've seen how it's affected the RC industry. Radio control industry has been kind of completely revolutionized by electric power, and that it's so much more accessible, more viable, and so forth. And I'm optimistic and hoping that we will be able to see the same kind of changes in light aircraft. And as a designer, it's kind of exciting because you can really design airplanes quite differently when you're using electric, because you don't have as heavy of an engine. The cost of the electric motor is significantly less than the cost of reciprocating internal combustion engines. So you could conceivably design airplanes with 5 engines on them, and you could use differential power to control the airplane. So there's just a lot of interesting things that we can do with it, that will happen with it. So we're 5 or 10 years from now, how much electric we'll be using, I don't know the answer, but we're in the United States, we're still spoiled by relatively affordable fuel, and where we can still find that. Again, with our STOL airplanes, we do a lot of business outside of the country, especially in remote areas, Africa, South America. And again, where availability of good quality fuel is a huge problem, and that's where electric could be a good solution for that. See, with solar regeneration and so forth, you could really have isolated little villages in Africa, South America, that basically completely independent from the power source, that still be able to fly a light little airplane.
That's a great idea. As we're developing our solar too, Tesla came out with their solar shingles. Maybe one day we're going to have a Zenith with a solar skin. Your wing and your humpback and your fuselage and your wing and everything becomes your power supply. And some of the challenges you meet up with now when you've got a gasoline or a fuel-driven engine, your weight and balance changes as you're flying. You're sucking gas out of one tank, you've got to switch over, you'll keep your load balanced. With electric, it doesn't, because your batteries are going to be your batteries. You're always going to be carrying the same weight in batteries, so you're going that route. Now, I mentioned the Tesla solar panels. What about the new Tesla battery? Is that something that might bleed over into the aviation market, you think?
Oh, absolutely. Whether it's a Tesla brand specifically or not, I think that's not the point. But the same technology and using battery units and just multiplying them across the line, I think that's a good solution. Again, even back on the engine side, we're using 50 horsepower engines, but stacking 3 or 4 of them together to manage to get whether it's 100 or 200 horsepower. So again, electric is much more scalable than internal combustion engines. So again, from a design standpoint, I think it's much more interesting that you can really design airplanes a little bit differently, and I could envision a future 10 or 20 years from now where our new airplanes are going to look very different than they look today because of the electric power. Whether or not that happens, I don't know. I really don't know. And at the end of the day, if we're still enjoying airplanes and so forth, I don't think that there's a need for change. But if it can make our lives better, if it can make airplanes more reliable, easier to build, easier to maintain, then it becomes a net gain for everybody. And I think that's how we grow the industry. Because aviation, it's still a very industry for those that are in it, but we've done a pretty poor job of people in the industry, and I think electric has the potential to do that.
Great. Well, we've been speaking with Mr. Sebastien Heintz of Zenith Aircraft, famous name in the experimental field. Does anybody have any questions? I see lots of people sitting here looking. You want to know, well, if people want to ask you questions after you come off the stage here, you've got an exhibit down in the center row of our outdoor exhibit areas there. Mike, you got a question? No? Okay. Yes, sir.
Now, Sebastian, what was the reaction after Oshkosh with that new display? And you actually told us the story, but how is that event going to influence you building that airplane with that display?
The question is about the unpaneled display in our CH-750 Super Duty that we introduced at Oshkosh. Number one, the panel in that airplane is, we decided to put it in that airplane because it's our new airplane. But you can really apply that panel to any of existing Zenith designs, whether it's the other STOL airplanes, even the low wing to a certain extent. Because again, that's not very dependent on the actual airplane. The point with that is we took the actual instrument panel out of the airplane, and I know on some designs, you wouldn't want to take the instrument panel bulkhead automatically out because for engineering reasons that's a structural component on the airplane. So I certainly can't on other designs. We added a couple little brackets because again we had sort of used the panel a little bit as a bulkhead. But overwhelmingly the response to the panel was wow, this is really cool. And I think people were surprised by it, and for a lot of folks, once they start thinking about it, it makes sense. Because again, the old instrument panel, the whole concept of having that bulkhead there, that's a blank panel, you put holes in for the steam gauges and so forth, that served a good purpose when we were installing individual instruments and individual switches and not putting, integrated display units, because that's the key word, is integrated. On these display units, we pull in all this information. So all the actual instruments, like with the unpanel, they're actually under the seat. The ADARs, the radio, and so forth. Those units, we reposition them under the seat of the airplane, and then push all that information onto that one panel. So the